All right. Oh boy. Busy day, busy day, busy day. You guys were blowing up my Slack for a while there. I don't even know what you were talking about.
Yeah, Nick was talking about forms or something.
I kept seeing
I keep hitting these weird edge cases on this one project, and I'm just starting to get really irritated with Drupal.
No, couldn't be.
So, Steven, is it weird that
I'll
we're both talking about Allie in our comments?
Are we?
I did notice that.
It is weird, yeah. Is it the same alley?
I mean, I only know one Allie Cross. So.
Oh, I haven't looked at the notes.
I refer to her as Allison Cross, though.
Okay.
No, I watched her defending her dissertation, the video on video game.
Oh yeah, that was her honors thesis. Yeah,
the violent video game playing and rule violating behavior.
Oh, it's cool that you bring that up. Okay,
it was interesting.
A little bit over my head.
Yeah, it was super technical, and I was kind of like, what? But I don't know. It was interesting to hear and see how there are different methods for calculating it, and some of them yield different results. And so on.
Yeah.
There was a lot of head nodding, yep, mm-hmm, right, of course.
Where did you see that?
Where did you see that from? Where was it posted?
I think Allie posted it on Facebook, maybe.
Okay.
Oh.
I'll send you the link, Nick.
It's at the bottom of the document.
Oh, it is. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't have Facebook
in the resources section. It's not on Facebook. It's on UNH's website.
No, I mean, actually, I don't know that I was ever friends with her on Facebook.
You don't follow anybody on Facebook. I don't know. I can't remember if it was Twitter or Facebook. Some social outlet.
I don't really follow anybody on Twitter either. I barely use Twitter. Looks interesting.
Alrighty, let's see.
So, Steven, you're guiding this conversation, right?
Yeah, sure.
Is it 247? Yeah, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I filled in any of that stuff at the top. Let's see if it's
240 something.
Okay.
I've been watching The Office again.
Have you?
And we just got to the episodes right when Steve Carell is leaving and Will Ferrell's coming in.
Yeah.
And Aaron's like, hello, Dr. Mifflin, this is Aaron.
Yes.
He's like, let's try it without Aaron.
Yeah.
Like, hello, Dr. Mifflin, this is.
Yeah. And then she says, oh, I think I like that better.
and then Michael's like, put it back in. And then the phone rings. She's just like, I can't, sorry.
I honestly have no idea what you guys are talking about. I've never watched The Office.
Favorite show.
Oh,
yeah,
God,
I've watched it dozens of times.
What's it on? Is it on Netflix?
Netflix. I think it's the most popular show on Netflix of all time.
Yeah, it is. Did you guys see SG? You guys see SGN?
Yeah,
I saw the first episode.
The last one, the one they had over the weekend. It was two people got married, and he proposed to her the way that Jim proposes to Pam in The Office.
Oh.
And the whole cast comes on and then they do a virtual wedding, and the whole cast comes on. So it was pretty good.
I did see that.
Nice.
I did see the. Yeah, I did see that.
That episode of SGN doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you unless you've seen The Office, because it kind of mimics the way they get married in The Office. It was kind of fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the last two seasons.
They're not nearly as good.
So I've heard that. I think that's why I stopped watching it.
I've never watched that show. People.
It's leaving Netflix at the end of the year. So everyone
that's why I get on it then.
I think that's why we're watching it. It's super good.
Yeah, we're big Office fans in this house. We're always referencing it all the time. All right, let's see. All right, I guess we're ready to roll here.
Sorry, one more time. It was I Allie was doing what now? Defending or what now, huh?
Honors thesis. She wasn't defending it. I mean, it's her honors thesis. I guess I don't know if you call it defending.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I label it correctly when bringing it up.
Okay. Let's see.
Massachusetts is reopening. The whole state.
Yep.
I'm going to put some initials in front of some of these things. The stories. So I'll put a... did you guys look at these things? You probably know what they are.
I did.
All right.
It's one of those things where so many of the decisions depend on the specific use case that I think there will be a lot of good discussion. But what?
Oh, did you look at... No, I was talking about the stories. Did you look at the stories?
Oh, yes. I did do that too.
All right. John, did you?
I looked at the Raise 500K one. I don't know about the free theme one.
So I'll switch you guys here.
I can look at that pretty quick.
Yeah, it's just
a short
FYI.
For your information.
All right, let's roll here. Got my coffee, got my notes.
Don't have your pen.
The thing that I didn't see in here is how long the course is.
It's 1 hour. It's designed to be 1 hour a week for 7 weeks. So it's 7 hours long, I guess.
Oh, okay.
It's an online course, and you can actually...
It says May 18th to the 22nd.
But you can actually sign up for it now and take it now.
Oh, okay. I might do that.
Yeah, I've got the link here to the exact sign up. Let me see if I can find it. I'll paste it.
We have a link to the DA announcement about raising the Drupal Association.
So here's the link to... That was I have a link to a blog post, right? This is the actual link to the sign up.
Yeah, I was looking at both of those actually.
Okay. All right.
Have you guys have used Drupal as me in the past, right?
Oh yeah, I've had a subscription a dozen times. I'll keep it on for a few months and then turn it off.
I've literally never used it.
Yeah.
So it's funny because we've had it for a while. It was part of like your Acquia. Like if you had a client on Acquia, like one of their benefits was free Drupalize Me videos. And like for the longest time, we never we had it. We just never watched it because like for some reason the problem we were trying to solve was like so specific. The video didn't get into enough detail about it, or I don't know. It was weird. And now I'm kind of like, it could be useful, but it just comes down to time.
I forget to send the link out to patrons. It's all right. You guys ready?
Yes.
It's just me. You guys seem to get soft again.
I'm sitting back, but I'm ready.
This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 247. Hello, Parts Department. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our thoughts are with the Drupal community as we continue to fight COVID-19. And on today's show, we're going to talk about some website requirements and how we would implement them. Hi, guys.
Good morning. Afternoon. Evening. Could be any of them.
I'm Stephen Cross, and joining me as usual is Nick Laughlin. Nick, what is going on with you?
Good afternoon. Not too much. We have my wife and I have been playing Overcooked, which is Overcooked 2, which is a Switch game. It's a lot of fun.
Tell me more.
Oh, really? Oh, it's so much fun.
It was on sale.
Is it as the title indicates? Is it about burning food?
It's about not burning food. So you're if you want to do a joint session, we can, Stephen. So two people from each Switch can join. So you can do like a full away game. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
So you're a little chef, and you get orders, and you have to make the food, and the environment is out to make that difficult. So it's a lot of fun. We've been playing it with a couple different groups. Got some cousins and some friends that we've been playing with. So yeah, we've been really enjoying it. We're also getting ready. Massachusetts is kind of in the final stages of preparation for reopening. I've got mixed feelings about it. I mean, on the one hand, it's nice to be finally seeing things starting to reopen. On the other hand, the phases are kind of vague. They're very much like phase 1, very carefully reopening. Phase 2, a little less carefully reopening. There's not a whole lot of detail and guidance yet, although that's supposed to be provided, I think, next Monday. But I feel like, people are just starting to get used to like wearing masks and different, you still go to the grocery store, people are still crowding. So I'm interested to see how this reopening is going to happen.
Not everybody. I see at least 10 people a day wearing a mask under their nose.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like we haven't even gotten to the point where it's kind of expected that you wear a mask. People are, it'll be interesting to see. I think we'll still stay home for the most part. Until we kind of see how things are going. But I think I think the other thing that's really difficult is, especially restaurants, I mean, they can't stay closed forever financially, but they also can't, some of the guidance that I've seen there is, 25, 30% occupancy for the first phase. And no restaurant on the planet can be profitable at 30% occupancy.
Right.
But
I mean, how many stores run on 5% margin? I mean,
yeah,
any business, it means you have to be running at 100% just to almost break even or just make a little money.
Yeah. And so the only thing that I've seen is a lot of restaurants are thinking about just going to full takeout because you have far less staff and you can have a higher capacity. And you can do that much safer. So it'll be interesting to see how things change. My sister's a hairstylist. She's having the same, they're having a lot of discussions in her industry, and a lot of the guidance there, it's like the guidance makes sense because it's going to keep people safe, but that guidance basically makes it unprofitable to be open.
Business, yeah.
Any thoughts of doing like front yard haircuts? Like, hey, I'll come to your house and cut your hair in your front yard, and then you can pay me and I'll leave.
I mean, the truth is they do, especially the higher end salons, like what she does, they do like they're using a lot of chemicals. They have to be. It has to be done in a place where it can be done safely, and the chemicals can be disposed of safely. But who knows? I mean, I think part of it is adapting as we open and figuring it out. But I think honestly, my biggest concern is we've tapered off a bit, but we haven't been declining in cases. So we're no longer increasing at such as a high rate as we were previously. But we're still finding a significant number of cases every day.
You would, though, as testing increases too, right? You'd expect to find cases, right? You'd expect the numbers to be going up, actually, if you were doing more testing.
No, absolutely. But that's one of the other concerns too. While testing is increased, it's not increasing at the rate that it should. I mean, I think we're sitting averaging around 12,000 a day.
Yeah. In Massachusetts.
And a lot of reports say, and we're doing better than a lot of states per capita, but a lot of the reports I've seen, the minimum that we need to have to safely reopen is 30 to 35,000 a day. So we're 30%, maybe 40% at what we need to be. I think the only state that actually has meets those testing requirements that I was looking at is Rhode Island. But we'll see. Like I said, I think it's important to start trying to figure out how we're going to move forward. I think for myself,
we can't stay closed forever. I mean,
yeah,
the three of us are lucky. We're in a position that we've all kept working, but there's millions of people that are not in that situation.
Yeah, and that's why I think, for me, like I'll do my best to continue to reduce that burden as long as I can. So I'm not planning on, we're open. I'm rushing out and getting my hair is getting pretty shaggy. I mean,
I'll tell you what, guys, I will do a drive-by at both of your houses this weekend and bring my clippers. Just set a little chair outside.
All set.
I have clippers. We just haven't. I think this weekend we'll probably try it. But,
so, John, what's new with you this week?
Well, being all sunshine and happy things, I'm going to talk about violent video games and how they contribute to rule-violating behavior. So Steve's daughter, Allie, was doing her honors thesis on this subject, and because she could not present it in person, they posted a video on the UNH website. Link will be in the show notes. And I saw this come across social media somewhere, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I have strong opinions on video game violence and how it contributes to people's behavior. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch this. So it's about 15 minutes, and Ali focuses on some of the gaps in where in the studies that have been done, and like where the gaps are, and she goes over three different scenarios of gaps that she found. And as we said before the show started, Steve and I both agreed that it was a little bit above our heads, but overall it was very interesting to see the different types of studies that are done and how effective they are at determining yay or nay on video game violence, and then to also determining how that kind of affects behavior. So overall, it was pretty interesting because, I have opinions on the matter, and this kind of was it was interesting to see that there are gaps, and there isn't a really definitive line between one or the other. Yeah. Stephen, what about you?
So what's new with me this week? So my topic is the same person as yours, Allie, my daughter. John, thanks for the feedback on that video, by the way. So the link will be in the show notes, right? Today I would be heading up to, if the coronavirus wasn't here, I would be heading up to New Hampshire and attending her graduation tomorrow, which is not happening. So she would have been graduating she's getting 2 degrees. She would have been graduating, I think, tomorrow from Justice Studies. And then on Friday from psychology. That's her other degree. And then Saturday would have been the whole school commencement ceremony. So we're missing out on that right now, unfortunately. We did get news last week that she did receive 2 awards, too. For each of her degrees, the faculty selected her as the student of the year. One for Justice Studies and one for psychology. So
oh, wow.
Congratulations, Allie. And I probably mentioned before here that she's joining a doctorate program at Arizona State University in the fall. Will be leaving in July. So this coronavirus has kind of been one of the blessings of it, has been that I get to spend a couple of months here with her in the house, which would have never happened. So it's been actually quite a bit of fun to have her around for the last couple of months, and probably the next couple of months moving forward. So I don't think she'll be going back to her apartment in New Hampshire, but maybe she will. Who knows? So let's move on to our stories for the week.
Yeah, our first story is about the Drupal Cares campaign, and I'm happy to say that the Drupal community has managed to help raise the $500,000 that the Drupal Association was looking for to make this campaign a success. Dries posts a blog post on his blog about it, talking about thanking the community. The Monday, there was actually a press release from the Drupal Association about it, talking about, I think they raised the funds in half the time that they had planned. So it was the campaign is still ongoing. So you can still donate if you want to, but it's going until the 31st of May, and but they've already reached their goal. So that's awesome. It's interesting because looking at this is great. This is a great outpouring of support for the Drupal Association. Drupal Association also released a video thanking the community for this. But it was interesting today on the Drupal event organizers group meeting. We were talking about how camps are supporting the DA, and it was very clear to me through both this campaign and listening to the conversation there that we really need to continue to support the DA. This isn't like a one and done sort of thing. They very much help all of us in different areas, running Drupal.org and the various things that they do. They've helped camps, local camps and meetups for a long time. If possible, it's if you have the ability to kind of turn around and give a little back to the Drupal Association, whether it's through membership or just a straight up annual donation. I think that's important. I think we should all keep sight of the fact that this was due to circumstances outside of our control. But going forward, the DA is a nonprofit, and nonprofits run on donations. So, making sure that we continue that support, I think, is very important.
And one final thing about that too is annual memberships or monthly memberships are usually better for organizations because they can plan on that revenue, whereas a one-time donation, they can't really plan on that revenue. That can certainly help in a shortfall situation. But I think one of the things that really would be great for the Drupal Association coming out of this is, more memberships and long form support like that, because then they can really hit a lot of the initiatives harder that they have going on.
Did you guys ever see the video? It's really old. It's a video that was going around the internet a while ago. I don't remember how long ago. It could have been 10 years ago. I think it was called Crazy Dance video. It's a video taken in a park where there's a guy who gets up and does this like really goofy, crazy dance. And everyone's kind of looking at him. And this was not a staged thing. And he sits back down. In the park, everyone just kind of looks at this like nutty guy doing this thing. And then a few minutes later, he gets up to do it again. And a second person gets up. Someone that was in the park as well gets up and does the crazy dance with him. And then next thing you know, everybody in the park is doing the crazy dance. And there's like a lesson there about that crazy dance, in that like Dries stepped up. It kind of reminded me of this campaign that just happened. Is Dries stepped up and offered to match funds, right? And that had an impact. But really, I think the impact came, it's not when the first person does something, it's when the second person does. So it's when those 29 companies got together, right? And says, we're going to match this too. It's that momentum of not the first person, but the second person that steps up and does something, and then the thing starts to grow. And it kind of reminded me of that crazy dance video. And then once the ball starts rolling by those 29 companies stepping up and doing the triple match, and then this thing went from 60 days to 30 days. So it's that momentum of the second person always that makes things like this happen. So, I mean, hats off to Dries for stepping up, and then for, John's company and Lullabot and those other agencies that, saw the crazy dance and decided to join in. So it was fantastic. Pretty amazing thing. So what else do we have for stories this week?
So our next story is Drupalize Me has a free theming course available. So this theming course was prepared for DrupalCon Minneapolis. And in order to mark the occasion when that was supposed to happen, they have decided to put it online and make it freely available. Their request is just that you make a donation to the Drupal Association, and I think it's a good way to. It looks like it's a. It looks like it's a basic to somewhat advanced look at theming. I mean, they cover pre-processing functions and creating a new theme, as well as I think templating layers. So it's a good starter course, I think. So feel free to take a look at that. The link to sign up for the course, as well as a blog post about it, are both in the show notes.
John, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm relearning how to swallow water. I'll be fine. Just continue on without me.
I wasn't sure if I should call somebody. All right, yeah, that's a great opportunity. And Nick, you can actually sign up for that. It's not just during that period of time. I don't know when this offer ends. I don't remember it saying, but I know you can go there today and start it right away if you want. You don't have to wait till the 18th.
Yep.
So
looks good.
Did you already say that?
I don't see an end. I don't see an end to it either.
All right, let's move on to our topic of the day. So we called it the show Hello Parts Department. And what we're going to talk about today is going to pick this like really simple functionality to have in a website, but maybe a common thing that you might need, and talk about the various ways to implement it. So this came up in a discussion on a project that I'm working on. And so as usual, I brought it here for some additional discussion from my wizardy friends, see what they think. So I'll paint the picture for you. Say I'm making this up, by the way, this scenario. Let's say we have a commercial business that has many locations throughout the U.S. And each location has different services. Like one location could have a sales staff and customer service. Another location could have customer service and a parts department. Another location have sales staff, a repair department, and a training department. So the functionality that we're looking to focus on is in Drupal, we'd be capturing, to display on the website, we'd be capturing each office's physical location and then the one or more contact phone numbers for each of those locations for the different services. So location, so you could picture if you're looking at the website, and I'll put this in the show notes as well later if you want to visually see this a little better. But you have a downtown location. It's at 100 Main Street, Providence, Rhode Island. And at that location, here's the sales number. If you want to talk to someone in sales, they're open from 9 to 5, and their fax number is this number. And then they have customer service. That's at this phone number, and they're open from this time to this time. And then you might see the East Side location at a different place in Providence, and their contact information is, customer service and parts. So you could have multiple phone numbers per location. Could be 1 to unlimited. And some of the functionality that you'd like to have on the website is to see all the locations and all their contact information. Or you may want to, as a user, say, I would like to see all the locations that have a parts department and what those phone numbers are. So if there's 50 locations, you want to narrow it down to 10 and just see the parts department's phone numbers. Does that functionality make sense to you guys?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
Absolutely. The only thing that I sometimes see that's in addition to this is a contact form for different locations, because sometimes people want to send an email, and that information usually gets attached to the location as well.
So the point of our discussion today is we're assuming that we would build a content type for the office location, has a physical address, has the name of the place. And the piece that we're interested in diving deeper on is how would we store the different contact information per location. So we've listed the different ways that someone could approach this. We're going to talk about each of them now. But what I'm interested in is not to know which one you guys would actually implement until we get to the end. So we'll talk about the pros and the cons of each, and then which one we would use to implement at the bottom when we finish. Sound good?
Yep.
So let's first talk about some of the considerations that you would have when you were choosing a method.
Yeah, so there's a few things to consider anytime you're approaching and solving a problem, not just a specific problem. One of the advantages of the Drupal framework is that you can solve a lot of problems many different ways. And so sometimes the trick is knowing which one is right for a particular situation. And the things to consider for that are how future-proof is your solution? Do you know additional information is going to need to be added in the future? Then you'll want to make sure that you provide a flexible solution that will allow you to add that in pretty easily. Another consideration is how close to core a particular solution is. So an example of a solution that's not particularly close to core used to be field collections or even panels. I know that people used to use panel fields to set up certain things. And that's kind of far from core because it's a kind of unique implementation of a contributed module used in a way that not a lot of people used it. So think about it. If a developer other than you came and looked at it, how much time would they spend trying to figure out how to interact with it? And if something is close to core, usually it's pretty simple to figure out how something was done.
So the first thing you brought up, future proofing and staying as close to core as possible, are kind of go together in some way, right? Because when you stay as close to core as you can, you're future proofing that way, because when additional modules come out, they're always working with core. So anytime you can choose a solution that's not contributed module focused and is core focused, you're helping future proof your project.
Yeah, and to go back to the panels example for Drupal 7, I think the panels field was a separate module. So an example is if something changed for Drupal core, well, panels was used by tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people at the time. So it would very quickly take that into account. But the panel field submodule or third party, other contributed module wasn't used by nearly as many. So it would have to wait for panels to update before it could update, and that can sometimes take some time. Another thing to consider is whether or not you need to have custom code. One of the other big changes from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 has been that a lot more often I find myself turning towards custom code to get something done. With Drupal 7, we had that saying there's a module for that, and almost anything you wanted to do, there was a custom module for it. And you could just patch together a bunch of different modules and get whatever functionality you needed. In Drupal 8, it's a bit more developer centric, and so a lot of that stuff where you might patch together 2 or 3 modules in order to get it, that might have some extra functionality you don't need or don't quite work exactly the way that you want to. Drupal 8, you're usually writing custom code to integrate that kind of thing. But it is a consideration. You still want to see if there is an initiative that covers your use case, and see if it's something that will work for you.
And I think the last thing is flexibility, right? So you want to make sure, along with, it kind of goes hand in hand with being future proof. You want to make sure it's flexible. So if down the road the requirement changes for some reason, the solution can flex to accommodate that new requirement, and that might change how you approach it a little bit. But you want to make sure that you are trying to maintain flexibility with whatever solution you provide.
So one way someone could first approach this problem is by simply adding a number of fields to their office content type. So while you have, address in there, you could create a field phone 1, and then phone 1 like label, or phone 1 type, and then fax 1 type, and then phone 2 and phone 2 type, and phone 3 and phone 3 type, and say that, no office would ever have more than 5 departments that they need to contact. So we'll create 5 fields 5 sets of fields that could put this into.
Until next year, when there's explosive growth and there are exactly 20 departments.
So for each of these solutions, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons. So can anyone think of a pro to that approach?
Well, I think the only pro here is it's dead simple to build, and it's dead simple to display the information. There's almost no, you're not jumping entities. You're not setting up any weird filtering. Like, literally what you see is what you get on the page.
It's also 100% Drupal, right?
If you think of the requirements that I laid out, though, the one way this falls down makes it harder is if someone wants to filter by type. That becomes very hard to do if you have fields laid out like this.
Not really, because you can combine fields and views in a search. So you could do a type field and then have it loosely related to those.
Yeah, the problem becomes if you have phone type, the phone type is a select field, and you say you want only things that show phone type fax, then associating that, if that's the second field filled in on one site versus the other, it's going to be very difficult to pull that in.
Right.
Yeah.
You could easily filter based on locations that have a fax, for example, but you couldn't show only the fax.
Right, which is the requirement. So that makes it not impossible, but difficult to do. Not straightforward because the customer service is field number 1 on one node, and it's field number 3 on another node. Makes it hard.
The other thing is too, from a database standpoint, like you're creating all these additional fields that may not necessarily, which admittedly is a con. You're creating all these additional database fields that may not necessarily ever be used. Like if you only ever have 2 or 3, you never get to 4 and 5. Now you have additional fields that aren't necessary. I think, as I said, one of the pros is like you're using core for this. This is like straight Drupal core. There's no real need for additional modules. You can theme it pretty cleanly as well, because you have you have ability to theme the content type. You have ability to theme the fields. So there's some pros there, but I think the cons here kind of outweigh the pros, right? So it's not very flexible for number 6, 7, 8, 9 infinity. And also, as we just talked about, it could be hard to filter that list down potentially to, to a set of numbers, or to see a location that has a certain type of department or number.
Yep.
There probably is an approach before this that we didn't put down that doesn't meet any of our requirements, but could also work as just a
HTML.
Yeah, one single field text box that people can type whatever they want into.
That's also not going to work on the filtering angle.
No, it won't. Right.
Yep. Unless you're using some sort of search appliance.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you could, but that would not be very flexible or very close to core either.
So let's go on to the second approach.
So I think the second approach is also a content type based approach, but here you're creating two separate content types essentially. One of them is a contact type, which kind of holds the contact information of an individual unit or department, and an office content type. And I think the office content type would contain the physical address and then have an entity reference to the contact information. So if you have an office at 100 Main Street, you have one piece of content that has 100 Main Street. And if that office has a service department and a customer service department, then it would reference the contact type for those two departments.
Yeah, so,
and that gets you, that gets you a little bit closer in the fact that you have, going back to, Stephen's example, you have one location, right? The East Side location, and the East Side location has a customer service department and a parts department. So that second content type that stores the department data, right, can have, couple of different phone number fields, can have a hours field, to define hours, can really be customized a lot more, right, than, the previous example where you're using kind of like a single content type with a bunch of fields.
And it makes those relationships a lot easier because now you can just say, hey, give me all of the contact type ones that have this type, service department, and you can travel up the chain to where they're contained. So it becomes kind of a built-in views relationship in order to pull that information together.
Yeah, it allows you to organize the data a lot better. I think our previous example, right, was there were some data modeling issues there where you kind of just lumping everything together. Here you kind of have everything split out. So when you're using this information in views, it's a little bit better. As with the previous example, this one can be achieved all with core as well. No additional modules needed. It's pretty well supported from the entity reference.
The only thing I think, John, that there could be a module needed is the interface to maintain. So if you go to add an office and you want to stay in that office and add the contacts, you need to have like inline entity type form to be able to create those related nodes on the fly.
Oh, you want one of those fancy admin UIs where it's
so one of the considerations needs to be, and we probably didn't talk about this up front, we should have, is like, we need to keep in mind when you pick a solution, how easy it is to maintain the content, right?
Sure.
So if someone has to go add and this is so if we talk about pros and cons, this could be a con for the solution, right? How are they going to enter these additional content types and create the entities in the nodes? They have to go outside and add them first and then go back into the office and attach them? Or do you use a contributed module that allows you to add them directly when you're maintaining the office? So that would be sort of a con of this solution. So while we're staying with core by using content types, we have to step outside of core to have inline editing capabilities for this solution.
Yeah, and I don't, I would argue to lumping that into the con column. I don't know that necessarily inline entity form is like the worst thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's a con. It could be a pro, right?
Right. So I mean, like if that's the only thing that you're kind of teetering on, I think you probably got a pretty good solution. But
so there is another con for this, though. I think to mention is that content types are heavy in that when you create a content type in Drupal, you've got the sort of the overhead of a content type supports comments and supports revisions. The question is you don't have to use those things, but it certainly carries the weight of that additional stuff for a content type.
So again, I say, is that a con, or does that just allow for maximum flexibility when you get down the road? Maybe on the office we wanna post comments about how great the service was, or maybe we want to even get into specific departments like, oh, the parts department really is terrible here. Don't go here. Right. I can see that being useful. Revisions, I tend to think revisions are always good. Maybe that's a little extra, right?
Wait, I need to interject here though. Do you actually use the comments module on any websites? A little aside.
Yeah. Yep. I've used it. To be fair, I've used it on one website.
I think I used it once, and I don't think I ever will again. I think it's a fairly well developed module, but I think it's one of those things where there's so many third party services that just provide so much extra administrative stuff that you just always use.
Like Discuss comes to mind.
Yeah, but you also have to realize that comments don't have to be like external comments from people. They could also be internal comments that your team makes on the content. Notes about a client could be comments.
Yeah.
Notes about the office. It doesn't have to be external.
Yeah. That's true.
Steve, by the way, just totally blew my mind. I never actually thought of using comments as an admin tool as opposed to like a commenting system.
Well, when Nick asked who's ever used them, that's how I've used them. For that solution. Yeah.
Well, all right. If your mind is blown, reach out to us and let us know.
I might have to keep that in mind because that's interesting. I think it is always a consideration when you're building something, all the extra stuff that comes along with content types like menus, paths, revisions. That's not always a con. Usually it's a pro, but it can be, in some cases, it can be a con. I mean, you can disable a lot of that stuff per content type, so it can also it's just an extra thing you have to remember. So like in this case, the content let me try that again. The content type, I would disable menus, right. But the office one, I may leave those enabled.
No, you're using a view to display that. You're disabling menus all across the board. But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to our next option here, because I think our next one kind of incorporates a little bit of the content type approach to it, right? And that's to use a contributed module. It's to build this with paragraphs, right? So the idea here is to build a paragraph bundle for the specific department, similar to the content type above, and then add that paragraph to the office content type, and basically use paragraphs as a kind of as a field collection, if you will, to add multiple departments to that office. So, going through the pros and cons list here, I think the pro, one of the pros here is like paragraphs is pretty well supported. Everybody seems to be using it. The editing interface, now you don't have to rely on inline entity form as you did in the content type, right? You can just keep adding departments rather to this office content type again and again.
But to be fair, it's basically using an inline entity form that comes with paragraphs.
Sure. Exactly. And then it's pretty straightforward. I think the cons here, right, are kind of what we talked about at the top of the show. It's not in core. So, as Nick was saying, there's a core update. You may have to wait or contribute to paragraphs to get it ready to be able to update core if you need to be. And then there is a possibility for orphans with paragraphs that you may run into issues with that. I think.
Yeah,
can you drill on that a little bit?
Yeah. So with paragraphs, it's not so much a possibility as almost a guarantee. When you create a paragraph, it creates an entity. So if you have an office that has a type and phone number, it's creating an entity in the back end and referencing that to the parent content type. Now, if you remove that paragraph from your you remove that office or that location or that department from that location, that paragraph will still exist in the database and it's considered orphaned. So it's not assigned to any content. It's not referenced anywhere, but it still exists in your database.
So you're not removing it, you're detaching it.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
And there's also some complications if you're trying to translate stuff because paragraphs just have kind of an odd, they have somewhat odd integration with translations.
Nick, you're muted. Nick, you're muted.
I don't know how that muted. In general, it's very.
So back up a little bit there.
In general, it's very well supported, but there is the possibility of orphans, and it can be a little weird with translations.
So speaking of orphans, I don't know if we've ever discussed this on this show, but taxonomies get orphaned too in Drupal and have for a long time. So if you
really?
if you have a taxonomy that you've linked to a node through entity reference, and you go through and delete the taxonomies, like you had a taxonomy for colors, red, white, and blue, and you decide, I don't want to use blue anymore. You delete it from the taxonomy, the vocabulary maintenance screen. All of the entities that are sitting out there that had that color attached to them, that relationship still exists.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean. I thought you meant the other way around.
No,
yes.
It's orphaned. Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that I remember Steve and I talking about this, and we actually talked about this on our road trip to Drupal Camp, New Jersey.
Oh, we did.
Back when people were able to like congregate in groups. So I was wondering. I don't think we've ever talked about it on the show. So first time for everything.
All right. So, any other pros or cons with paragraphs?
I think one other thing to note here too is that if you're introducing paragraphs, and this actually might make Nick's head explode, so brace yourselves, viewers. The one thing you get with paragraphs is the ability to embed paragraphs or nest paragraphs rather. So you do have an ability here to nest paragraphs in such a way where you can have infinite phone number fields for a department where you could just keep adding items over and over again for different phone numbers and different hours and different items. So it does give you kind of the maximum amount of flexibility from that standpoint.
So I'm curious, why would that make my head explode? I nest paragraphs all the time.
I thought you had a disdain for nested paragraphs. I apologize.
No, absolutely not. No. It's just something you have to be careful of, because if you're templating with them, it can get a little messy if you don't do it right. But yeah, no, I have some very deeply nested paragraphs in some sites.
I will also say, to Nick's point before on the translation front, if you're using nested paragraphs and trying to translate them, you could be paving yourself a road of woes. So just be aware, there are some caveats to nested paragraphs.
Our next solution is a custom entity, which now in Drupal 8 you can create. We talked about custom entities on a recent show. That sounded like a question. Did we talk about them on a recent show, or am I
very briefly? No, it wasn't the whole topic, I think, but we mentioned it.
We should probably dive into them at some point in the future. So you can create a custom entity. So a content type is basically a custom entity. You can create your own entity, maybe called contacts, and go that route. So you'd be using all core at that point. And it's literally, these fields added to the Drupal table, not a lot of overhead. They're very lightweight. They integrate with views fine. You could do all the sorting and filtering that we've been discussing. So from that perspective, they got a lot of pros. The cons are it's all custom code, basically, to create a custom entity in Drupal. There's some scaffolding that you can use to initiate it and build out the initial set of code that you can use. And when you use the scaffolding, it works fantastic. But it is sort of an advanced way to do this.
It's also a lot of custom code. It's not even with scaffolding. I mean, it's not just a couple of files. It's a significant number of.
The scaffolding, if you think about it, generates all the code that is needed to make a content type work. It's basically all that code again for your custom entity. It's a lot of files. Yeah.
It also seems to me, and I could be positioned as the Mr. No custom code guy, but it also seems to me that it would be, as you guys said, a lot of custom code, but also could be a blocker for future proofing the solution, where Drupal API changes, code changes, you need to go in and update the code. So, I mean, ultimately, I think a major con here is you could be saddling somebody with a lot of maintenance and upkeep costs around this solution, where the other two solutions, maybe three solutions, are more are easier to update and could be a little bit more flexible. Well, I guess not. Obviously, custom code is very flexible, but could be easier to maintain down the road, I guess.
I think with the example of the use case we gave, the custom entity probably doesn't fit. But if we were looking at offices that were in the tens of thousands, then this approach might make a little more sense. Maybe. For the volume of data, and because that's where custom entities play well, because they're very slim and you don't have any baggage with them. So if you need something that's really super fast and doesn't need, although you could do revisions with it, you can do translations with it, but if you don't need that stuff, it is super fast and super efficient. For large volumes of data, it could make a lot of sense to do it. So, we've provided 4. Does anyone have a 5th they'd like to add in here? We've approached this 4 different ways. To recap, we've got just adding fields, static fields to the current content type. We've got using a new content type. We've got using paragraphs, and then we've got a custom entity. So 2 of these solutions are similar. I think a content type and a custom entity are very similar, except one's code heavy, one's not. Paragraphs is fully contributed code solution. So where do you guys sit here at the end of the day? If you were implementing this, is there a leader in your mind of which way to go?
I would go ahead, Nick. You can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I would eliminate the first option and probably the custom entity option. Yep. The solution for me would be one of the other two, either the paragraphs option or the 2 content types, most likely, barring some other requirement.
So I'm going completely middle of the road here, and I'm going to say that I would probably do option. I'd probably do the content type option, but I would probably use paragraphs for kind of the phone number fields in case there was a need for additional fields. But I think the content type option is a little bit more scalable and a little bit more maintainable, and kind of obviously, as we said, uses quite a bit of core. I think with the addition of inline entity forms, that could be very useful there as well. So yeah, I think the content type option in my mind is probably the way to go.
So my choice is the same, content type. To me, it's the far winner here. I think that you'd have to convince me to use paragraphs for this. You'd have to really give me a reason to not use a content type.
What's the biggest reason for not using paragraphs for this solution in your mind?
It's not necessary. Yeah, it's just not necessary.
I think the decider for me would be whether or not paragraphs are used heavily on the site elsewhere. If paragraphs aren't used on the site, I most likely wouldn't introduce them for this. If paragraphs are already heavily used on the site,
I agree with that. I agree with that completely. If you're already using paragraphs, I mean, you've already gone down that road, so stay on the same road, right? It would be silly to do something new.
Yeah, because then you don't need two content types. You could very easily create one office content type and use a paragraph bundle for the individual departments.
Yeah, and then you nest paragraphs. You probably need to nest paragraphs. You probably need paragraphs anyway, even if you have two content types, because you want the attached fields of phone number and phone number type. Like those are a unit. And if you have
but that would kind of be covered. That would kind of be covered in the department. But I do agree that, I when Stephen first brought this issue up to Nick and I in Slack and asked how we would solve for it, I had mentioned that, paragraphs is the new field collections, right? So, back in Drupal 6, 7, there was a module called field collections, which did exactly that. It took a bunch of fields, grouped them together, and allowed you to add multiples of the same grouping of fields. In Drupal 8, you're going to use paragraphs for that functionality. So, I look at this as like the phone number field, right? Where you have like office phone number 2, office phone number 3. Like you probably want a paragraph bundle for that. And then to nest that inside of a department paragraph bundle, and then have that paragraph bundle be part of an office, like a location content type, right?
Yeah, because I'll usually go one deep for content types. I'm not going to nest three or four content types chained to get something working. Like I'm not going to create a phone number content type that stores.
I mean, this using our content type solution, I mean, there's no nesting here. It's just simply, I think you lost me there why you would need multiple content types.
Well, because you have...
it's an entity reference. It's only one deep.
It's just one.
Well, no, because so you have the office location, which is 100 Main Street, but then you have a fax number and a support number and something else. So you need...
but no. So the content type is the downtown location, 100 Main Street, right? And then the other content type is the department, which is like sales or customer service. I think, ultimately the other aspect here too is if you're building a faceted search for departments, having that additional content type is pretty useful, because if you have it in a paragraph field, then you kind of run into the same problem that you would run into with just the static fields, where now you're relying on looking at like what type of paragraph content you have on a certain piece of a certain content type. So I think the long game here too is to look at how this data is going to be used. If it's just going to be displayed on a page like, hey, this is our location and here are all the departments, then that's great. But if it's going to be and again, depends on what search appliance you're using, but if you're just using Drupal core, you may want to look at that as well as how you're going to search this data if that's part of the requirement.
All right, guys. That was an interesting discussion. So let's wrap here.
So if you have a suggestion on how we could solve this or have questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at Talking Drupal, or you can email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And I'd also like to take a moment to thank our patrons. Thank you for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choose Become a Patron. And remember, patrons get early access to the raw show before we release it.
So thank you for listening. If you're a visual person, the show notes will map out a little bit more detail of what we were talking about today in terms of the visual layout of the department information and the addresses. So you can check out talkingdrupal.com/247 to see those show notes. John, how can people reach out to you?
You can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi, and you can find out about Oomph at oomphinc.com.
And Nick?
You can find me online pretty much everywhere at NixVan, NICXVAN.
And I'm Stephen Cross. That would be at Stephen Cross on Twitter. And that's Stephen with a PH. Take care, guys. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
And remember, if you enjoyed listening, we enjoyed talking.
Oh, we should have put that in the show notes.
I actually forgot.
We need to end with that every week.
Yes.
I don't know if that was the exact tagline. I'm gonna have to go look at last week's show notes.
Type that into the close here, and then the host will.
Well, I put it in the last week's show notes, but we need to.
Oh, I missed it. So if you stick it in this one, I always grab this text from the. So I'll do it. What am I asking you to do it for? So I'll just put in here, as if we did it. I'll put in SAC. What was it? If.
I don't know. I have to go. I have to go look.
If you enjoy listening,
John's enjoyed talking.
Sometimes I enjoy talking here.
I think you said I've enjoyed talking last week, but I put it in as if you've enjoyed listening.
We've enjoyed talking. There it is.
Okay. There you go. Okay. So we'll just stick that right in here, and then maybe that will make it to next week's notes. And maybe we'll do that right at the end. It'll be our version of Seacrest out.
or what I can't remember what they say on Twit. Something about putting Twit in the can or something like that.
You know what? I've stopped listening to those shows.
Really?
Yeah.
What causes this? Well, I stopped listening to podcasts in general just because I'm not in my car, and that's typically where I do most of my listening. So
great podcasts. Some new ones I've been listening to. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I do it when I exercise. So there's one called Rewatched. Anyone hear of that one? It's been around for a couple of years. If you like movies, they do like famous movies and stuff. They kind of review movies, do movie reviews, movies that you would watch over and over again.
Interesting.
They talk about those. It's a good show. Rewatched. Another one, Nick, The Office Ladies. You've heard of that one, right?
Really? No.
Oh, the Jenna and the blonde. So Angela. They have a podcast they started about a year ago where it's the rewatch podcast. They're going episode by episode.
Oh, geez.
It's really good.
Oh, by the way, you know what I found out recently about The Office? Did you know what Creed Bratton's real name?
It's Creed Bratton.
I didn't realize it was really him.
Yeah. He's a musician. He's really a musician from a band.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
He played in a band called the Grassroots in the 60s. And he plays himself on the show.
I had no idea.
You don't actually find that out until the last episode.
Oh, okay. And I haven't watched the last episode. So, but I was looking that, and I'm like, Oscar's name is really Oscar, and Creed Bratton's name is really Creed Bratton.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of useless information about The Office. We actually, UNH had a Office trivia night a couple of weeks ago, and we came in third place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
All right,
guys. We're enjoying it.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Okay, I think I need to go cook some burgers.
I think I'm going to do something very similar. All right, John, you look puzzled.
Sorry, somebody just posted a Twitter account, Rate My Skype Room. It's a bunch of people on different news outlets, and it's a bunch of people on different news outlets, and it's just a screenshot of their face, and like you just looking at their background of their office, and it's pretty amusing. Like it is super interesting now that everybody's like doing remote stuff to see like what people's backgrounds look like. Wow, this is like hours of fun right here. That's unfortunate. All right, I got to go water my grass and make some dinner.
All right, guys.
Thanks. Sounds good.
Catch you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.